Are you aware of Latino immigrants, for instance, who are preyed upon and who are basically harmed in the way that Senator Delph has described by employers that are taking advantage of them? Is that a legitimate problem that he's described?
I'm not aware of one case in Indiana. I do know that there have been people coming in from other states that have claimed to have been abused, namely in the state of Georgia. And but I don't know of any case here.
But you're not aware of any cases here?
No.
And Senator Delph, you say that you have heard from people who...
I have heard from people that have talked to me about that problem. And this is it's not a racial issue. This is about a fundamental pillar of democracy, the respect for the rule of law. And all citizens, all Hoosiers, Latino, Caucasian, African American, Chinese, everybody has a stake in enforcing the rule of law. And when we turn a blind eye to the rule of law, it allows for the erosion in the respect for the rule of law with our young people. And I think it's a terrible message to send to young people that it's okay to allow an illegal activity to take place as long as you make a profit. I think that's a terrible message to send to young people.
Well, what do you tell, though, organizations who have lined up against this, in addition to Mary Jane Gonzalez's? We have the Farm Bureau, the Chamber, the pork producers, restaurants and hotels. They say that there are, what, 50 to 85,000 undocumented workers who make the Indiana economy chug along. These are, in many cases, jobs that would not appeal to Hoosiers at those salary levels. And
well, that's the key. At those salary levels, when you hire illegal immigrants at below market wages, you put Hoosiers out of work, and that's not fair to Hoosiers. That's not fair to law-abiding citizens. The people that oppose this bill are equally frustrated as I am with the federal government's inaction on this issue, and we share that frustration. But at the same time, to profit from an illegal activity and sacrifice a great principle or a great American ideal, and that is this respect for the rule of law, I just don't think it's right.
But just, if the Indiana unemployment rate is less than 5% or hovers around 5%, are there enough Hoosiers needing jobs to fill 85,000 openings that would be created potentially?
That's a legitimate question to ask, and I don't know the answer to that. I will just say that, to me, this issue is very simple. It's about the respect for the rule of law. And if Indiana needs to have others come into this country, they need to encourage those folks to come in the legal way. And they need to petition their federal government to help to do that. But to allow an illegal activity for profit, I just don't think is right.
Alan Taylor, I know you wanted to make a point.
Yeah, Senator Weatherwax, during one of the hearings, asked the question, what happens to businesses when their illegal workforce leaves? And I turned around and said to him, Senator, I'll tell you what happened last year when ICE raided the Swift meat packing plants in 6 different states, arresting 1,282 illegals. It represented 25% of Swift's total workforce, gone in 24 hours. They put ads in the paper, and 3,000 American citizens applied for those 1,282 jobs that everybody keeps telling us Americans won't do. There is no job that an American won't do for a living wage.
Mary Jane Gonzalez, what do you say to that? Are there...
You know, I'd have to research that. I've never heard of that. I've never heard that there were ads, and I'm not saying that Mr. Taylor isn't saying something truthful, but I would tend to challenge that, quite frankly, in our state. Perhaps in their labor market, if that is correct, they were able to find a trained and qualified workforce. But Indiana, as we all know, is lagging behind, where the skills and abilities of our labor force need to be upgraded to a level where we will compete with the labor market and the requirements of companies.
Mike Murphy, you represent an area, of course, that being Indianapolis is largely urban, so it doesn't have a lot of the agricultural workforce that we've talked about with the pork producers and the Farm Bureau. But do you sense among your constituency that there is concern about the economic impact of potentially forcing out between 50 and 85,000 undocumented workers?
Well, my district is largely residential. The only large employer is a hospital. And so would not be a huge economic impact on my district. And there's a lot of frustration in my district. My neighbors, I'm frustrated with the federal government, just like Senator Delph is. But I feel, for the most part, like, let me say two things. I believe that everybody should follow the law just like Senator Delph does, and nobody should come into this country illegally. Having said that, I think it's the federal government's responsibility, and I think to enforce our immigration laws and to keep our borders secure. And I think we need to put more pressure on our elected officials in the Congress. And Mike Pence has been a leader and at least trying to grapple with the concept. He may not have it right yet, but he's working on it. And I think it's important that we put the pressure on the federal government to deal with this issue. Spending state resources, state time, police powers, all those kinds of things to take on a federal issue is very difficult. It's like squeezing water. We may solve a problem briefly here in Indiana, and the problem may move to Kentucky, and then it'll move back to Indiana, and it's an interstate commerce problem and an international problem as well that I think, as well intended as we all may be, we don't have the ability to completely solve. And I think it's going to lead to potentially some serious economic problems. I'm not an economist. There have been studies done by the Sagamore Institute, the University of Arizona, that suggest that in this state, it's not just immigrants who would lose their jobs. You know, again, illegals should not be here, but there are U.S. citizens who would lose their jobs as the immigrants lose their jobs.
Saying if a company, in fact, had the proverbial 3 strikes in the 10-year period, not only would the unemployed or the undocumented workers be out of work, but the native Hoosiers...
It would be more immediate than that, because what happens is it would send a chill through the Indiana economy, and really I do not have sympathy for the illegals, okay? But it would send a chill through the economy where even legal immigrants or U.S. citizens who may look different than us would be less likely to want to be here, stay here, work here. And the studies show, again, I'm not an economist, but the studies show that as many as 6,500 Indiana citizens would lose their jobs around the state because of the near-term effects of the law. I have no idea what the long-term effects would be.
Let me just say, in a post-9/11 world, Thomas Jefferson said once that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. And in a post-9/11 world, we have to stand up and help the federal government out when it's failing in its responsibilities to secure our borders and to enforce federal immigration and customs law. We have a responsibility to our citizens, to our taxpayers, to help try to solve this problem. When I go to my town meetings, they want solutions. They don't want us just to point fingers at the federal government. They want us all to work together to try to solve the problem. And for anybody to stand up for an illegal activity, I just think it's wrong.
Alan Taylor, you have a question.
Yeah,
please make it quickly.
Well, sure. I just want to say, you know, this isn't just a federal issue. Look, bank robbery is a federal issue, and we prosecute bank robbers. Illegal drugs is a federal issue, and we prosecute, you know, illegal drug users. So illegal immigration, yes, it's a federal problem, but it's also our problem. And any state that has an international airport is a border state. Guarantee it. Okay, I spent 12 years with the U.S. Customs Service, and I'm telling you that, you know, 40% of everybody that's in this country illegally overstays their visa, comes through a regular port of entry.
Mary Jane Gonzalez, we got to wrap up. I'll give you 10 seconds to have the final word.
I think that we need to place a little bit more attention on the economic impact, the positive economic impact that our undocumented immigrants do contribute to this state and this country. The use of the ITIN number, individual tax identification number, obviously that was granted by the IRS several years ago, about 10 years ago, and they do pay into the local, state, and federal tax system.
All right, very good. Unfortunately, we'll have to stop there, but it's an issue I'm sure we'll be talking more about as this session progresses. Again, my guests have been Senator Mike Delph of Carmel, Representative Mike Murphy of Indianapolis, Alan Taylor of Hoosiers for Secure Borders, and Mary Jane Gonzalez of the Indiana State Hispanic Chamber of Commerce.